Everyone, my name is Teacher Phiri. I teach grade 4 at Fountain School in Kasama. So today I'll take you in social studies. Social studies will look at the topic Christian religion. The topic for today is Christian religion, and the lesson is the economic and the emotion suffering. Economic and the emotion suffering. Hello everyone, my name is Teacher Phiri. I teach grade 4 at Fountain School here in Kasama. So I'll take you in social studies today, and the topic for today is Christian religion. The topic is Christian religion, and under Christian religion we are going to discuss economic and the emotional suffering. The lesson for today is economic and the emotional suffering. So, when we look at these two words, we have economic here and the emotional suffering. We all know what suffering is. So, when we talk about economic suffering, what are we referring to? What is economic suffering? What is economic suffering? Okay, so we are saying economic suffering is when people are unable to meet their needs. Economic suffering is when people are unable to meet their needs. When people needs are things that you cannot live without. So when people are unable to meet their needs, we call that economic suffering. It's affecting them economically. People are unable to eat 3 meals in a day. People are unable to dress, to put on correct and nice clothes. People are unable to live in good shelters. That is what we call economic suffering. When people are unable to meet their basic needs, people are unable to meet their needs, then people are suffering from economic suffering. Are we together? So we said economic suffering is when people are unable to meet their basic needs. We are saying. So like we said, economic suffering is when people are unable to meet the basic needs. Just like I explained, when people are unable to have 3 meals in a day, people are unable to, for example, take the children to school because of the fees. People are unable to have proper shelter. People are unable to wear nice clothes. We call that economic suffering. So we now move on to emotional suffering. We move on to what? Emotional suffering. These are two different words, and there are two different types of suffering. So we look at emotional suffering. Emotional suffering is a state of mental distress. Emotional suffering is a state of mental distress. You know, emotions is how a person is at the particular time. So when you have a mental distress, you're suffering from something. It could be that you have something which is pressuring you. It could be that you've lost a beloved one. Your emotions are disturbed. You are not thinking well. You are stressed maybe. You are stressed either at work, at school, or other things. Other things are stressing you. That is emotional suffering. Your emotions are not okay. Your emotions are not well. You are not in a happy state. You are in a sorrowful way. Your emotions are disturbed. So we are saying emotional suffering is a state of mental distress. Are we together? So we are saying emotional suffering is a state of mental distress. Okay. Just like we said, emotional suffering is a state of mental distress. Are we together? When your emotions are not okay, you are not happy, you are stressed, you have so many things to think about, you have so many things that are making you uncomfortable, your emotions are okay, your mental, you're not thinking well. So we call that emotional suffering. So what are the things that causes the, we'll start with the economic suffering. What are the things that causes the economic what? Suffering. So the things that causes the economic suffering. So we say causes So we'll say causes of economic suffering. Who can tell me some of the causes of economic suffering? What causes economic suffering? So we have these other the causes of, the first one is lack of money. Lack of money. Money helps us to buy different things, a lot of things. Okay, money helps us to acquire a lot of things. So now, lack of money. So we say lack of money. Lack of money is the major cause of economic suffering. So lack of money to do what? Lack of money to buy food. Lack of money to buy food. You don't have money to buy food. You don't have money to go and buy food in town or at the market. That will cause what? Economic suffering. You won't have, if you want to buy food, you won't have food to eat. Hence you will suffer with what? Hunger. That falls under what? Economic suffering. Lack of money to buy what? Food. Lack of money to buy food is caused by economic suffering. You won't be able to have 3 meals in a day because you don't have money to buy the food that you're supposed to eat. So these are the causes of economic what? Suffering. Lack of money to buy clothes. Lack of money to buy clothes. You will find that you don't have money, you are just wearing same clothes, torn clothes. It's because what? You are suffering from what? Economic suffering. Lack of money to do what? To pay school fees. Lack of money to pay school fees. Lack of money to pay what? School fees. Some of our parents, you find that they'll find it difficult to find money just to pay for your school fees. So this causes what? Economic suffering. Are we together? Lack of money to pay bills. Lack of money to pay bills, utility bills. Those are the causes of what? Economic suffering. Are we together? So those are the causes of economic suffering. So now we can now move on to emotional suffering. We can move on to emotional suffering. So now we'll now move on to emotional suffering, the causes of emotional suffering. Okay, what do you think are the causes of emotional suffering? What do you think are the causes of emotional suffering? Okay, very good. So some of the causes of emotional suffering are illnesses. Illness can cause emotional suffering. And illness can cause emotional suffering. When someone is not feeling well, you are sick, you are emotionally disturbed. Can you even have time to laugh? No, you are in pain. So illness causes what? Emotional suffering. Your emotions will suffer. Your emotions won't be okay. You won't be yourself because your body is not okay. You have an illness. You are not fine. So hence, this will cause what? Emotional suffering. Stressful life. stressful life. Stressful life also causes what? Emotional suffering. You don't have time to rest. You are stressed with either schoolwork, okay? Even things at home, you are stressed. Your emotions will be disturbed. You will always want to, you look like you are lost. You look like you are disturbed because of who? You are living a stressful life. You have no time to rest. You have no time you have no time for your own self life to relax. You are ever stressed. So living a stressful life causes what? Emotional suffering. Situations. Even in situations. Situations. We all go through different situations. Here on situations, it could be loss of a beloved one. Maybe you find yourself in a difficult situation. You sometimes maybe someone accuses you of doing some things which you didn't even do. This causes what? Emotional suffering. You lose a beloved one here. Definitely your emotions won't be okay because you have lost someone that you love. You mourn your emotions here. You suffer from emotional suffering. Okay? Emotional suffering. So situations that we find ourselves in. And if this emotional suffering is not, if this emotional suffering is not dealt with, if you allow it to take over you, other people even become depressed. People become depressed. Depression also causes it. Depression can fall under emotional suffering. If emotional sufferings are not well controlled, you can even be depressed. Depressed people even think of suicide, killing themselves. Those are the results of emotional suffering. So when one is suffering from emotion, if someone has got a challenge or suffering, the emotions are not well, what can you do? What can you do to overcome that? So we are saying emotional suffering, like we said, can lead into you become depressed. Okay? Are we together? And it's a common illness in most people who suffer from emotional suffering. You are sick. You start thinking of your sickness. Instead of you to concentrate on getting better, you concentrate on your sickness. That will lead you to becoming depressed. Okay? You are stressed. Instead of you finding ways to overcome the stressful life that you are living, you concentrate on the stressness to lead into depression. The situation that you will find yourself in. Instead of you to be looking at the situation in a positive way or to find courage from other people, you concentrate on the situation. It will lead into what? Depression. And depression is a disease which doesn't have medicine, a cure. You are the only cure to that disease, and it's common. Other people even run mad because of emotional suffering. Okay? So how can you overcome this suffering? How can you overcome this suffering? So you can overcome emotional suffering. One, by talking to someone. You are sick. You don't even want people to visit you. You don't want. You just want to be alone. No, you need people to come and comfort you. You are stressed, talk to someone. Economic suffering. Economic suffering, say people suffer from a lot of economic problems. How can you overcome this economic suffering? One, you can overcome this economic suffering by either working hard in life or live within the means. Live within your means. Most of you like demanding things from your parents. Even things that you know that your parents cannot manage to buy, you start demanding. You need to live within your means. As you work hard, you need to live within what? Your means. Are we together? So just like we said, economic suffering is is when people are unable to meet their basic needs. Economic suffering is when people are unable to meet their basic needs. Emotional suffering is a state of mental distress. Is a state of mental distress. Causes of economic suffering, we've said lack of money. Yes, lack of money. Then what does lack of money do? You are unable to buy food. Lack of money to buy food, lack of money to buy clothes, lack of money to pay school fees, lack of money to pay utility bills. Remember we talked about utility bills and examples of utility bills. Lack of utility bills are able to pay for electricity, DSTV, all those things. Causes of emotional suffering, we said illnesses. Illnesses, stressful life. Stressful life, even situations that you find yourselves in. Some of you here at school, you've not been studying, you fail the need, you fail, you start thinking about your situation, it even leads you into emotional suffering. The secret to passing is what? Studying, so that you avoid some situations. You avoid the situation of failing. Are we together? So just like we said, emotional economic suffering is when people are unable to meet their basic needs. Emotional suffering is a state of mental distress, and these are the causes of suffering, the two sufferings. Are we together? Is it clear? Okay, so now we are going to have an activity based on what we discussed. Okay, so here with me is an exercise. The first question is saying, what is economic suffering? What is economic suffering? So you will define what economic suffering is. Question 2, what is emotional suffering? What is emotional suffering? So you define what emotional suffering is. Question 3, list down 2 causes of economic suffering. List down 2 causes of economic suffering. So you write for me 2 causes of economic suffering. Question 4, mention any 2 causes of emotional suffering. Mention any 2 causes of emotional suffering. So you mention there. Make sure you write in good handwriting. You write correct answers and the correct spellings. This is all I had for you, Teacher Phiri.